Welcome to my reptile room. In 400 square feet, I packed in 45 different animals, and for the very last time, I'm gonna show you all around. This is the last time I'm gonna show you this reptile room. After we're done, we're gonna change everything up. So today, not only am I gonna show you all 45 animals and their enclosures, but I'm gonna show you how this room is gonna look completely different, who's leaving and who's coming in, and I want you to tell me which animals get to stay in this room going forward. Truly, you're not gonna see Steve after this video. Steve is my northern blue-tongued skink. I also have an Indonesian named Erwin who's not in this room, and Steve is not going to be here for very much longer. We're gonna find him a brand new home because he just doesn't fit in the collection anymore. He's an amazing animal. Northern blue-tongued skinks are from Australia. They like it a little bit drier than the other type of blue-tongued skink, the Indonesians. And because this room is almost all tropical species that needed a little bit more wet, except for Diamond, of course, who will never leave, it just doesn't work, and we're getting rid of the entire row here, so he's gonna find a new home, and you're gonna get to decide what we're gonna put in his place after I explain to you exactly what's going in the place of all these PVC enclosures. His time at Wicked Wicked Reptiles has come to a close. And so has the time for all the PVCs, including the one that Steve is in. All of these PVC enclosures are going away, and so are some of the inhabitants, and instead custom enclosures that I'm gonna make myself are gonna take the space. So instead of having 6 enclosures in this space, there's only gonna be 3. That's right, this entire 8-foot stack of PVC enclosures is going away. I'm gonna be keeping some of the ones I like the cages ones here, because they are really good quality. I'm just gonna put them in a different facility. They're no longer gonna be here, but some of the animals are gonna get to stay. What we're doing instead is doing custom enclosures, like this one here. I'll tell you all about Stitch closer to the end of the video, but enclosures that are 4 feet wide by 6 feet tall by 2 feet deep, we're gonna be putting in that side of the enclosure. And at the end of the video, I'm gonna show you a bunch of reptiles that are not in this room, and you get to pick which ones go in these custom enclosures after we make them next month. On the top row, right beside Steve, this is, usually I don't like to start videos real sad, but my Dumeral's boa Marowak unfortunately passed away last week. As we were ramping up and cleaning this room and getting it ready for show, he just wasn't with us anymore. Cleaned the enclosure, water, was fed the week before, everything seemed normal, and unfortunately an animal that was only 10 years old and should have had a lot of life left isn't with us anymore. So I'm really sad about that, but he's got a cool name tag. I try to keep these videos lighthearted, but Marowak will truly be missed. A special thanks to Creature Farms for sending me all of these nameplates. I'm not sponsored, there's no discount code that I can give you. She doesn't know that I'm saying this, and I'm not getting paid to tell you how cool they are. I just really, really like them. I've got one for almost all my animals, and the ones I don't have, I'll definitely be ordering. They're made of wood, they're pretty darn cool. Buy one. Down below Marowak, we've got Snoop, our Fiji banded iguana. And I've been talking about Fiji banded iguanas and Tonga banded iguanas, and I've got both. Snoop is a true Fiji banded iguana. Now the difference is there's 4 different species from Fiji, or that island archipelago. So we've got the Tonga banded iguanas, which are from the Lau Islands. Those are the ones that we're gonna show you closer to the end. My Frankie, the one that got me into this species. Snoop is a true Bula Bula. So the ones that are actually from the Fiji archipelago, that are the country of Fiji proper. A little bit bigger, they've got a bump on the top of their head, and then when he fires up, which we'll definitely show you, he gets less blue than the Tongas. But this is a full-size animal. This is a male, full size. He's going to get an upgrade that's bigger than this because they do like a little bit of height. And also I'm looking for a female to breed with him. So if you know anybody that has a female Fiji banded iguana, let me know in the comment section below. Snoop is in a 4x2x2 cages enclosure. I do love the cages enclosures. You can get them at Chewy now. Thanks Chewy for sponsoring today's video. Inside all these enclosures that I'm going to show you today, you're going to see lots of supplies and all the lights and all the misting systems, and all of that I get from Chewy.com. Chewy's helped me bring this reptile room to what it is today. If you want to give them a shot, new customers right now get a $20 e-gift card when you spend $49 or more. Thanks Chewy for sponsoring today's episode. Fiji banded iguanas, if you can have them, are really easy to keep. I mean, they like it a little bit more humid, they like a pretty hot temperature, but nothing crazy where you need a crazy basking spot and a big gradient. They like a little bit of height, but you can keep them in these enclosures for long enough that you can build a custom enclosure or order one, because although they're an expensive animal, they're more expensive to get an enclosure for sure. Next, we've got Diamond. Diamond obviously just ate because he's very plump. This is the star of the channel and an animal that I've had since 2019. he's a regular bearded dragon. I mean, bearded dragons you can buy anywhere at any expo, any pet store, don't buy them there, any reptile specialty store or breeder, and this is probably the most non-interesting animal in terms of rarity, or I've never seen that before that I have ever had, or that I've ever showed on this channel. And even so, he's the star of the channel because he's got such a good personality. I can stick him on my shoulder and he'll stay there until I'm done the episode if I choose. He's in a 4x2x2 cages enclosure too. And as a testament to how good these enclosures are, which by the way, I'm not being paid to tell you, just everyone always asks what they're in. I've had this since 2020, so for over 5 years now, and it's had 0 issues whatsoever. I've done lots of videos about how to take care of bearded dragons, but super easy, a little bit of decor. It's not truly bioactive, although there are some isopods in there. So I just scoop his poop, like the diamond peasant that I am. This is one of my favorite animals that I've ever kept. This is Thunder, the Burmese python. She's an albino. I think she's het for granite or het for hypo. It doesn't matter because I'm not breeding her. I have no interest in breeding the species. I just have an interest in holding on to the species and kind of taking care of them like a pet. And the reason is because I love how placid Burmese pythons are. Her enclosure isn't very interesting. One of the ones that we're moving out of this facility, so she's not even gonna be here anymore, but I'll never get rid of this animal. She's one of the more placid ones where if I wanted to hand a big snake to a child, this is the one I'd give them because she's still not big enough that she could hurt anybody. She's still small. I mean, she's 5 years old now, or almost 6 years old. By far the smallest female Burmese python that I've ever seen. I don't know that she's a dwarf Burmese python because she wasn't sold to me as such, although she did come from a breeder who breeds dwarf Burmese pythons. So I treat her like a normal Burmese python or a mainland, a full size, but this is as big as she's got in 5 years, and we feed her the exact same as we feed any of the other Burms I've ever kept. Including this snake here, Lightning, who I gave to my buddy Chris Biggs out in Manitoba. So I love Burmese pythons, they're great, and if they all stayed this size, I would say that they're the perfect snake for basically everybody, because this is a little bit bigger than a ball python, really not that much bigger. She is in an 8-foot enclosure, which we're moving out of this room. And I did take the hide out just to show you how big the enclosure is compared to her. And the hide is literally a flipped over water bowl, so it's nothing to write home about. But I would love to see her in an enclosure that is naturalistic and maybe 4 feet deep instead of 2 feet deep. Although an animal this size for sure could be kept in an 8-foot by 2-foot by 2-foot enclosure. I just like giving them more space like Kratos, which we'll show you in a little bit. One of the more placid snakes in my collection, a female that would look great in a breeding project, just never will here because this is my baby and she'll just be an ambassador for more videos like top 5 reasons Burmese pythons are the best snake ever, coming next month. On the very bottom of this no longer to be stack is Franny. Franny is a BCI or BI, we always change names in reptiles, a Central American boa, and she's pretty big. She's kept growing since 2017 since I got her, so she was about a year old then. Let's call her about 9 years old. Fantastic animal, still a really reasonable size, and she's in an 8-foot by 2-foot by 2-foot cages enclosure, but the light burnt out immediately before we started filming this. Like literally cleaned everything up and then the light burnt out as we were about to start filming. So that's why it's dark. And I will go and buy more. I know everyone thinks that I get hooked up. I buy all these lights. So I have like 17 lights I need to buy. She does get a little bit of UVB, even though they probably don't need it. This is an animal that's really placid and easy to care for, but Franny eats like a champion. That's this 8-foot stack that's going somewhere else. I'm gonna show you the rest of the room that's staying where it is. The sticks and bricks enclosure is still doing great. Thank you so much for asking. This is my colony of leopard geckos that I've had for, I guess, closing in on 2 years now, a little bit over a year and a half. These animals have been together in this enclosure here. Now this, again, because the entire 12 feet of space is being taken up by 3 4-foot enclosures that are gonna be verticals. So this is going to, in fact, it's going to a friend of mine. I'm gonna give it to him at the expo we're going to next weekend. The animals are doing great. There's 6 different feeding stations and 6 different water stations and a bunch of different basking spots or hot spots as well. And we've just basically made a labyrinth out of bricks and sticks. And the reason that I did that is to prove that an animal doesn't have to have a pretty enclosure, it just has to have a functional enclosure. And also, if you use the materials that they'd have in the wild, to me, that just seems like just the best way to do it, the most natural way without making it super duper pretty, which is great too, which we'll show you literally the next enclosure. And in the wild, you find them in brick walls, literally brick walls with one entrance and no exit in the back. So they kind of all like clamor together and there's no way for them to get out unless they live in like a symbiotic relationship with each other. Where this one, the difference I made is that every little chamber has an entrance and an exit. So they can get out, and they've never been any fighting. There's never been any skinny tails that I've seen or any reason to remove any of these animals. And the way they interact with each other is kind of interesting. They look at each other, they almost have like these social cues about them. And then when they actually come into contact with each other, they'll oftentimes lay in the same area, the same pair every day. So certain animals will crawl along a certain basking spot, especially when it's food time or when I spray the enclosure, but they don't usually rest there. Almost all of them either pair up or are on their own and have their own basking spot that they use every single day. It's really interesting to me, and to create an environment like you'd see in the wilds of Pakistan, Iran, India, wherever that you'd find them, I just think that's the coolest thing. Now, the reason I'm getting rid of this enclosure is to make room, and I am getting rid of the actual enclosure because, again, any enclosure that makes that sound, I'd like to get rid of. And instead, I'm gonna be putting them in a 5-foot new age pet enclosure, which I've done a bunch of videos about, but I wanna give them just an extra foot of space and then put a background in there too, so they have a little bit more usable area. I think that this area is fine for them, but to give them just a little bit of extra space, I wanna see how they use it and how it's different. This is still one of my favorite enclosures, but the next one I make, I'll probably make a little bit prettier because, I mean, it'll be fun to look at, and it'll be upstairs. It'll be our focal point in our dining room. I have a bunch of secrets that I've been keeping, a bunch of animals that I either have already or a bunch of animals that are coming in that I don't have yet that I'm building enclosures for. And one of them is Malum, my black tree monitor. I've got a black tree monitor coming in from Indonesia. What's great about tree monitors is they're tiny. They're so small. So even if you live in an area where you can't keep monitors or lizards over a certain length, the snout to vent on these is legal basically everywhere. Not only that, but they're arboreal. So if you don't have a lot of floor space, but you want something that looks like a cabinet basically, that's what this is. So this is a 3-foot wide enclosure, 6 feet tall and 2 feet deep, and I'm going to be setting it up very much like this one that we'll talk about in a second. The difference is this enclosure here, my blue tree monitor enclosure, I named very much the way that Mikey at Ants Canada does, which definitely inspired the reason I did that. And it's called Hutan Hari, which means day forest in Indonesia. This one will be called Hutan Malam, which means night forest, and we're gonna give it a completely different vibe where it's a little bit darker because they're from Indonesia but different islands. The black tree monitors are from Aru, so it's a little bit denser jungles in that part of the world, where Bantanta, where the blues are from, have a little bit more open canopy. So day and night jungle, and I cannot wait to show you the full build. But the blue tree monitor here is completely done. This enclosure I wouldn't say perfect, but is pretty close to what I wanted it to be as possible. I did a whole video about it, my favorite video that I've ever done on the channel, right here that you can watch. So Stitch is my blue tree monitor, almost full grown, a little bit bigger, not that you'd be able to notice because ever since we put her in this enclosure, the first few days, she was great. She was right at the glass and she wanted to be held. And then now she hides every time we come in here. So a little bit more socialization, but she doesn't bite. And once we get her out, she's totally fine. A big log in the middle that we found, and all of this wood, by the way, that I'm using for branches, I found in the woods. You're okay to do that. It's completely fine. Clean it off as best you can or leave it out in the winter so that everything freezes if you live in a place where it does that. The background is completely made out of cork insulation, which is difficult to find and expensive, but they're able to climb on it, so every inch of this surface is a climbable area. And as you can see, some of the plants did really well and some of them didn't. And that's okay. We're gonna replant this enclosure when we plant the one for Malum. And now I know, I've learned, every enclosure is a little bit different and the environments are different. And some plants that work in some enclosures don't work in these ones. But there's certain plants, like this string of turtles, that is doing so incredibly well. But the pitcher plants didn't do well, which really sucks because that's an Indonesian staple that I was really hoping was gonna do great. I've got a grow light on top and also a UVB bulb, which is very similar to the biggest enclosure in this room. We finally put the Predator inside this 1,500 gallon enclosure. To give you an idea of how big 1,500 gallons is, my bedroom as a kid was about 3,000 gallons. This is half the size. So more floor space than I had with my bed and dresser, everything taking up space, is in here. And this is where the bulk of the animals are. There's 24 animals in this enclosure right here. And I think there's gonna be a few more, but we'll get to that in the next video, I think. So we've got an emerald tree boa, a female in this enclosure, and I would love to add the other two, but what I've noticed is all the epiphytes that we planted on the back by wrapping them in cork and then screwing them into the back wall, this is a very small emerald tree boa, a northern, and she has destroyed a lot of them. Not only that, but a lot of the ground plants, because we do cycle from dry season to wet season to mimic the natural behaviors, well, some of the plants didn't really do that well once we turned the sprinklers on for a little bit longer. I think they're gonna rebound, but things like this palm plant are definitely done, and some of the alocasias died off and then now are creating brand new plants. It's this circle of life, kind of like a cycle that you'd see in the wilds of South America. And that's the cool thing, is I've got a jungle here from Indonesia, I've got a jungle here from South America, because they're on almost the same latitude. You can treat them almost the same and have them on the same timers, sprinklers, and everything else. So for sure, my favorite enclosure. I'd love to have another one just like it, but it is a lot of work to set up. It took months and months and months, but now that it is set up, the dart frogs, which there's over 15 of, just hop around. No issues whatsoever. Sometimes they even hop on the snake and doesn't bother the snake at all. And because the dart frogs don't want to eat the lizards and the lizards don't want to eat the dart frogs and the snake doesn't want to eat either of them, this is a completely safe way to do things. It's been done in zoos for years and years and years. Maybe don't do this in like a 36 by 36 enclosure because it might feel a little bit stressed. But when you have 1,500 gallons of space, I think it's perfectly safe to do. We've had this enclosure up for 2 full years now, and it's been nothing but a dream. I would do it again in a heartbeat, and I can't wait to see how it evolves and how the plants evolve, and when we replant it, how that does too. The very first one of these custom enclosures that I made this year is for sure the weirdest one. It's 14 inches wide, 6 feet tall, and 2 feet deep. So it's absolutely ridiculous. I'll show you the door mechanism, which I couldn't figure out a good way to do. So it's literally magneted on and held on the bottom with dowels. Anyway, we all start somewhere and all the next ones are gonna be much better. Inside that enclosure is this guy, Dave, my Luchianis gecko. Now, Dave and Diane were living together, but at the end of the breeding season, when she started to lay eggs, which we're getting a few of, he decided that she wasn't done being bred and she decided she was. So we separated him and he's got a really good enclosure here. It's not very wide, so he's about as wide as this enclosure is, but obviously the enclosure is several times taller than he is. So the thing with Luchianis geckos, or really any ractodactylus gecko, or even the crested geckos, which technically aren't ractodactylus, no science was harmed in making this video. Anyway, these animals are really big for geckos. In fact, they're the biggest gecko in the entire world. And I feel like this is the perfect enclosure for him because they don't need tons of room to go side to side. Although there is 2 feet of depth, which is definitely twice as long as he is. I would say this enclosure is about 6 times as tall as he is long. So he's got tons of branches to choose from, tons of different levels. How close do you want to be to the light? Because we do have a UVB light in there. At the very top of the enclosure, the UVB is quite strong, and sometimes you'll see him there for a few minutes, maybe a half an hour, but he spends most of his time deep down in the enclosure, and we planted it just enough and given it enough sticks so that this enclosure is very dark at the bottom. So we didn't even plant the bottom because plants really wouldn't live. I wanted to give him the option to hide from the light during the day in a naturalistic way where I don't have a kind of like a phony looking hide that's made of plastic or something like that. He can hide the way that he would in nature. I can't say enough good things about this, and if I had more room for Luchianis geckos, I would definitely get more. On the opposite side of the 8-foot stack we're getting rid of is an 8-foot stack that we're keeping. And technically it's only 2 enclosures, but we've turned it into 3 and soon to be 4. So this enclosure is an 8-foot enclosure that's really 2 4-foot enclosures put together. And we've separated it with plywood, and then we put some cork on the side to make it a little bit prettier. But what I've noticed in this room is that these enclosures are kind of ugly because I haven't decorated them in a way where we can put plants on the walls. So right now it's empty. This is where Doug was last year. And going inside of this enclosure here are gonna be my other emerald tree boas. They're Guyanese, so they're a little bit bigger. I don't know if that has to do with where they're from, but they're definitely bigger than the Suriname that I showed you over here. This enclosure is not done at all. We haven't touched it yet. This is next week's project. Of all the animals I've ever tried to breed, This to me is the holy grail of all the ones that I've not been able to crack the code on yet. This is a very sheddy Tonga banded iguana. This is Martha. This is the female that is breeding Frankie. Frankie was my very first iguana. We got him a mate last year. It's crazy how small they look. She actually has one of his pores on her face. We're trying to get them to breed. We have them in an enclosure that is a 4-foot cube. So 4 foot by 4 foot by 4 foot, which is a lot of space for a pair of these. And we just use branches that we found from outside, sanitized them, and then strung them up with some screws from the outside of this PVC enclosure. Inside, they've got a UVB, which I just turned off because it looks terrible, the lighting for the camera, and a basking light too, and that's kind of it. The humidity stays really close to 80%, sometimes dipping down to 60 during the height of the day. The temperature stays between 90 degrees, right where the basking area is, all the way down to about 79 degrees, kind of closer to the corner where there is no heat element. And they've also got a Reptirad heat panel in there too. If you're from Canada and you're like, I can't find a heat panel, Reptirad from Cornell's World. But I would say of all the animals that I keep, in terms of lizards, these are the coolest lizards that there are. I mean, it's a tough, close call with the tree monitors for sure, but I would say a personable animal that is always out on display. They are never hiding. They sleep in plain sight. They act in plain sight. Every time I open this enclosure, it's almost like a chore now because they jump out at me. They're almost too friendly. Like imagine a golden retriever puppy, how they just want to jump at you and be pet and loved. That's these guys, except for instead of being pet and loved, they want food and your warmth, and that's basically it. And don't tell Diamond, but that's my favorite animal in my collection, probably. An animal that I really hope can produce some babies. They have small clutches, but I think that in Canada, where we are and we're allowed to have these, there really isn't a cooler species that you could possibly get. And she does have a little bit of carrot on her nose because she was just eating. Also, it's bioactive. There are so many freaking isopods in this enclosure. It's absolutely crazy. So now it's your turn to tell me what goes in the brand new enclosures that we're building. They're like this one, except for 4 feet instead of 3 feet wide. This is about 360 gallons. Here are the options. My favorite are the Kimberly rock monitors. I've now got a trio of Kims, and I would love to set them up in a rock wall style background with bricks and logs and all sorts of areas for them to perch and climb and jump, because these are the goofiest little dudes I've ever seen. They can also handle a lot more humidity than most people might think. Another great option would be to put Snoop in one of these enclosures, or maybe put Snoop where Frankie and Martha are and put Frankie and Martha inside one of these enclosures. And then there's the snake options. I would love to put Pittsburgh, my Macklats python, in one of these enclosures. Right now, she's still relatively small, but this is an animal that's going to get probably 6 feet. And although it's not a 6-foot enclosure, it is 6 foot tall, giving this animal tons and tons of room. Plus, they like it a little bit taller than they would like it wide or deep. Another favorite of mine, Fergus and Molly, the carpet pythons. Putting these carpet pythons, which are relatively small, inside this enclosure, and this could be their forever home and a place where they could breed and possibly just stay together for most of the year. We've been cohabiting them since we got them, and it's been going great. Or maybe the frill dragons. Now, I said frilled dragons because we have Tilly the frilly, but we've also got 2 female frill dragons, Indonesians, coming from Indonesia in the same order that Malum is coming from. This way we could put a trio together and Tilly could have 2 girlfriends and hopefully have a great breeding project. But it's up to you. There are 3 enclosures and I want you guys to decide. Let me know in the comment section below who gets a brand new enclosure. And if you want to see how we made those enclosures, check out this video right here.